On an afternoon in early spring, along the northeast coast of Japan, the sea did something impossible. It pulled away from the land. The tide drew back farther than anyone alive had ever seen. It bared a seabed no living person had ever looked upon. This video recreates real events, guided by real historical photographs from public archives. These flooded streets became some of the defining images of the disaster. For a few minutes, the coast simply held its breath. And then, far out on the horizon, the sea began to come back. The water always comes back. The only question that afternoon was how high. This was the most powerful earthquake ever to strike Japan, and the wave it sent to erase the coast. In a single afternoon, nearly 20,000 people would be swept away, and the water would leave behind a second disaster, one that could not be seen, drained, or buried. It began deep beneath the seafloor, 70 kilometers off the coast. Two great plates of the Earth's crust had been locked together for centuries, one slowly grinding beneath the other, straining, waiting. At 46 minutes past 2, they tore loose. The seafloor lurched east by as much as 50 meters and heaved several meters toward the sky, shoving the whole ocean above it upward. It was a magnitude 9, the strongest earthquake in Japan's recorded history. On land, the shaking did not stop. It went on and on for nearly 6 minutes. Skyscrapers in Tokyo, 200 miles away, swayed like reeds. The ground itself cracked and turned to liquid. Solid roads rippled like cloth. The quake shoved the main island of Japan more than 2 meters east and tilted the planet on its axis. Along the coast, the sirens began to wail. Loudspeakers ordered everyone to the hills. People had minutes at most before the sea returned. Some climbed, some hesitated. Some went back for the ones they loved. Out at sea, the wave was already coming for all of them. In deep water, it was almost nothing, barely a swell. But it was moving at the speed of a jet aircraft. As it reached the shallows, the seafloor forced it upward. The swell reared into a wall of black water. In Kameishi, engineers had built the deepest breakwater in the world. The wave went over it as if it were not there. At Taro, a seawall 10 meters tall had stood for generations. They had called it the Great Wall of the coast. The water climbed it, crested it, and swallowed the town whole. On the wide Sendai plain, no wall stood high enough. The sea simply walked inland. It came not as a curling wave, but as a rising tide of black water. Thick with everything it had already destroyed, it carried boats over the tops of houses. It carried houses over the tops of fields. Cars raced ahead of it, trying to outrun a thing that could not be outrun. It surged miles inland, up the river valleys, against the current, into towns that had never seen the sea from their windows. In Rikuzentakata, a forest of 70,000 pines had sheltered the coast for 3 centuries. The water erased all but a single tree. Whole towns folded into the sea in minutes. In Minami-Sanriku, a young woman stayed at her post in the disaster office. Over the loudspeakers, she called out warnings as the water rose around her. Her voice reached thousands and told them to run. The building, and most of those inside it, did not survive. At its highest, the water reached the height of a 4-story building. In places, it climbed nearly 40 meters up the hillsides. Nearly 20,000 people were killed or swept away that afternoon. Almost all of them drowned. 9 out of 10 were taken not by the shaking, but by the sea. Many were the old, who could not climb fast enough, and those who turned back and ran out of time. But the sea was not finished. 40 minutes down the coast stood the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station. When the earthquake struck, the plant did exactly what it was built to do. Its reactors shut down within seconds, but a reactor that has stopped is not a cold one. Its core still burns with fierce heat and must be cooled without pause, or it will destroy itself. With the power grid down, giant diesel generators roared to life. They kept the cooling water flowing. For 40 minutes, the plant held, then the sea arrived. The wave was far taller than the wall built to stop it. It poured over the defenses and flooded the plant. It drowned the generators in their basements, and in an instant, the cooling stopped. The control room went dark, the dials died. The operators were left blind, listening to reactors they could no longer cool. Inside the sealed cores, the water covering the fuel began to boil away. With nothing to carry the heat away, the fuel grew hotter and hotter, until it began to melt. In 3 of the reactors, the cores melted down into pools of molten fuel, exactly the disaster the plant was built to prevent. As the overheating metal reacted with steam, it produced hydrogen gas, and the gas had nowhere to go. The next day, the first reactor building exploded. Days later, a second explosion tore through another building, hurling debris and radiation into the air. Invisible contamination drifted out over the towns and fields and settled silently. The government drew a line on the map and ordered everyone within it to leave. More than 150,000 people fled their homes. Many left with only the clothes they wore. They left meals on tables and animals in the barns, believing they would be home in a day or two. It was rated a level 7 catastrophe, the highest there is. The same rating as Chernobyl, and yet the invisible killer everyone feared took almost no lives at all. Years of study found the radiation itself directly killed virtually no one. The true toll came from the flight itself. Thousands of the old and the sick did not survive being torn from their homes. The disaster's cruelest lesson was this: the fear of the wave's second gift did more harm than the poison it left behind. On the drowned coast, survivors climbed down from the hills to a world that no longer existed. Where their towns had stood, there was only mud, splinters, and silence. From across the sea, help came. American ships and aircraft turned toward the coast in an operation they named Tomodachi, friend. Helicopters carried food and water into towns the roads could no longer reach. A great cargo plane touched down at Sendai's ruined airport days after it drowned. Piece by piece, the coast began the long work of digging itself out. In the years after, Japan raised new seawalls, taller and longer than any before. But the ocean keeps its own memory, far longer than any wall, and far longer than we do. High on the hillsides above these towns, older warnings still stand. Carved into stone, some are a century old, a few are far older. Their message never changes: do not build your homes below this point. High dwellings bring peace to our descendants. Remember the disaster of the great waves. Centuries ago, people who watched the sea rise left a line on the land and begged those who came after to stay above it. In a handful of villages, the living had listened and built above the stones. When the water came, it stopped just short of their doors. The sea came in exactly as far as the old stones warned, and no farther. The water always comes back. The people who carved these stones knew it. The only thing ever forgotten was them. The coast has been rebuilt. The plant is being taken apart, slowly and carefully. And the sea waits, as it always has, for the next time. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. These videos take real research and care to bring to life. If you'd like to see more, consider subscribing. This has been Cataclysm History, and I'll see you in the next one.